So today I want to be talking about fashion and I want to be talking about frameworks. Bear with me because there is some method to this crazy madness. Now, there is this really weird misconception that we change our frameworks and perhaps our libraries as often as we change our fashion. As soon as a new trendy framework comes out, there seems to be this belief that everyone just picks up their code and moves it to the new framework. Well, that's just crazy. That just doesn't make any business sense. With fashion, of course, it's all subjective. You might prefer to have a different hairstyle. You might prefer to have a different shade on your nails, different color of your nails. You might prefer to dress in a certain way. And obviously, you have the seasons that influence that as well. So you're going to be dressing completely different in the winter than you do in the summer. And perhaps you might be a goth. Maybe you're, into punk rock. Maybe you're into other bits and pieces that, you dress to suit those kind of things. And obviously that's perfectly fine. Whatever. But the thing is, there seems to be this really weird sort of misconception that we as developers should be changing our frameworks as often as we move from one fashion to the other fashion. As soon as one season changes, we suddenly pick up our code and move it to another season. It's crazy. There is more legacy out there than there is new stuff. And, that just makes sense, right? Because as soon as the new stuff is out, give it a couple of months and then it's been updated and so forth. And therefore the version that you're working on is legacy, right? And there are requirements on certain projects, especially that I'm aware of, that require certain legacy frameworks to be used, right? So, for example, you might be running certain infrastructure that prevents the use of new technology. Maybe you're running infrastructure that requires a certain version, right? Cannot be upgraded anymore, and therefore you physically cannot upgrade to a new framework, a new version, and so forth. And therefore, migrating from one framework to the other framework is actually more of a DevOpsy move than it is actually just changing from one fashion to another. Like I said, there is more legacy out there than there is new code. And that is how it's going to be. And the thing is, there seems to be this really weird fear that, especially amongst junior developers or people who are trying to learn, and that is that they're constantly chasing this new technology. And that's just simply, in my opinion, baffling, because that new technology yes, it's new technology, it's great to use, but in the professional world, in the world where people are actually reliant on software that works and has been working well for a very, very long time, you don't just pick up another framework and plonk it on the top. You don't just rewrite your system every 3 months because a new framework has just come out or a new version has just come out, and therefore you have to, that just doesn't happen. Just doesn't happen. There's an awful lot of work involved in moving from one framework to another framework, let alone moving from one version of one framework to another version of that framework. There's lots of testing, there's lots of screen changes, designs, and believe you me, as soon as someone suggests moving to another framework, there are considerations about maybe improving different features, right? And therefore you have the sneaky sort of feature creeps coming in that makes the whole thing even longer. It's not just suddenly you're moving from one thing to another thing. And let's just be honest here. No client is going to call you up and say, actually, we want to do this on Angular instead of jQuery, or we're going to be doing this on React for no benefit. For absolutely no benefit to the consumer. The consumer doesn't give a damn, right? It's a website or it's a web app. They don't care what it's written in. They care whether it works or not. And so when you go to a client and you say, oh, I'm sorry it's taken me so long, but I've decided to rewrite it in React, or I've decided to use Angular, or I've decided to use Laravel instead of Symfony. But the features are the same. They're exactly the same as what I showed you, say, 3 months ago. But I've spent the last 3 months testing and changing the framework. They're not going to be happy with that. They're not going to, because there's no business benefit to that, to them. Now, obviously, there's a big business benefit when you're using things that perhaps give you more features, more performance enhancements and stuff like that. And then you can make a business case for moving from one thing to another. But this whole misconception of everyone just suddenly picks up their code and moves it to another framework every time a new framework comes out is just bizarre, in my opinion, because that just simply isn't how business works. Yes, there are lots of frameworks out there. Yes, there are lots of things that we need to learn, and we're constantly learning. There's lots of things that I don't know. But you have to put a stake in the ground at some point and say, this is where I am, and this is what I am learning. And also the business benefit of using legacy code is that more people know it, right? So more people know a particular version. When Symfony 2 came out, there was more people who knew Symfony 1.4 than they did 2. There's more people who know 2 than they do 3. There's certainly more people who know 3 than they know 4, right? So you shouldn't always just try and be on the cutting edge, because that can be a very lonely place. And yes, all of these things get released quite frequently, but you shouldn't be seeing that as a fear. You shouldn't be afraid of change. You shouldn't be afraid of those things that are coming down the line. There's an awful lot of stuff that I need to learn personally in various parts of the web, be it the front end, be it the back end, and so forth. Some things that I know that I'm doing now that are going to be outdated in the future, but that future is still quite far away. And until someone tells me that they need it done in another framework or another language or another library or another version of something, because there is perhaps a security flaw in what I'm currently working on, or perhaps there's a performance gain from moving up, then I'll just stick with what I know works. It's also really important to know what you don't want to learn, and so you narrow down your field of view. You narrow down what it is that you're actually specializing in, to know what it is that you don't want to learn. It doesn't matter if you let it sort of advance and grow and so forth, because that's you making a decision, defining your niche, defining what it is that you want to develop and specialize in. If you're changing your framework every 3 months, you're not actually going to be specializing in any framework. You're not actually going to know that framework like the back of your hand. You're not going to know it inside and out. You're going to know snippets of lots of different frameworks, but you're not actually going to be a specialist in a certain framework. If you are a new developer, or if you're considering web development, then what I would suggest you do, instead of looking at all the new shiny toys, is actually look at the stuff that's been around for a long, long time and work with that. Obviously work with the latest version if you can of that particular framework, but make sure that that particular framework has been around for many, many years. Because the thing is, what you're going to do is land yourself and put yourself in a better position for a job in that framework, because that framework has been used for, like I said, many years, and therefore there's going to be more job opportunities for you than perhaps the specialist new shiny toys that are just fresh out of the box. Yes, it's all well and good to know that kind of stuff, but the opportunities are more ripe in the legacy bits and pieces. And it sounds backwards saying that, me saying let's not use the new stuff all the time. But seriously, when you're a new developer, you want to be focusing on frameworks, languages that have been around for many years, many, many years, because that is where the work is. And if you're lucky enough, you might actually be able to progress that website to a new framework later on down the line. But that is a journey of development that not only you have to go through, but also the website has to go through as well. So you might be maintaining the legacy stuff, but then you might be putting together a proposal for migrating to a new framework, or at least a new version of that framework, and discovering all the benefits and so forth. And like I said, you really need to think about the business benefits of doing that, because nobody is going to allow you to work on something for 3 months and not actually change any features, but you've just changed the code. That doesn't make any business sense. So in short, we don't change our frameworks as frequently as we change our hairstyles, and we certainly don't change them every time a new framework comes out. Now, the How to Code Well channel has a Discord server. If you've got any comments, questions, or queries, if you've got any ideas for future topics, if you've got any coding help that you need, then do join the Discord server. You're also going to be supporting the channel, which is awesome. You'll also be having some one-to-one talks with me as well. Thanks ever so much for watching. Happy coding, everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.